One of the worst scandals and criminal actions of this president in this second Trump administration is this ongoing murder of civilians in international waters. Donald Trump, because that's exactly what he's doing. He's murdering people. He's labeling them as drug smugglers and narco terrorists and whatever the hell else he might want to label them, as if labeling them those things then gives him some sort of constitutional or legal authority to then just have them summarily killed. It doesn't. He can designate them whatever he wants. It does not give him any further power to use the military to conduct lethal strikes on anyone. But this is what they want you to think. Just like domestically, where Trump has people kidnapped off the street, held without due process, and sent off to a foreign prison camp. And he thinks, or he tells his cult followers, that it's legal because the people he is kidnapping and renditioning are drug dealers or gang members or Tren de Aragua or whatever the hell he says. As if because they are bad people engaged in bad things, if that's even true, it's not like he ever offers any proof of these things. Even if it's true, that means that you can deprive them of due process and send them to a foreign prison or do whatever the hell else you're going to do with. No. Even if what he says about them are true, it's illegal. It's unconstitutional. The reason we have due process is to make a judicial determination about who these people are and what exactly they did. Donald Trump just declaring it by tweet edict is not enough. And going back to his murder of people on the high seas, this is such a flagrant, I don't want to say abuse, it's so much beyond abuse of power. It's a crime. It's a war crime. Donald Trump is a murderer. That is what's going on here. He and his Secretary of Defense are war criminals who should be impeached, removed from office, and put in prison. That's what should happen. After all due process, of course. The same due process that Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth deny to others. I'm not saying we deny them their due process. They should have their day in court. And if convicted, they should spend the rest of their lives in prison. But at a minimum, they should be impeached and removed from office. Of course, we know that that's not going to happen. Certainly not anytime soon. But if Democrats win big in the midterm elections and take back control of Congress, even at a bare minimum, the House of Representatives, these are the kind of hearings they need to be having. And whether or not you think you have the votes to remove him from office via conviction in the Senate, you should still impeach his ass. The final 2 years of his term should be spent defending himself in all of these investigations into his criminal activity, his constitutional violations, his grifts, his bribery schemes. And by the way, Donald Trump's immunity that he got from the Supreme Court in that horrendous decision, that was a limited immunity. First, it only applies to things that he did while he was president. And it doesn't cover everything he might do while president. It only covers things that are official acts of the president. And all of these crimes that he is committing to benefit himself personally, none of those are official acts. Bribery certainly isn't. And that whole thing with the $400 million plane and so many other bribery schemes he had going on, those are clearly acts of bribery. Bribery is one of the few enumerated things in the impeachment clause as reasons to impeach and remove a president from office. It is therefore certainly not an official act of the president. So my point is, there are things for which he can be prosecuted when he leaves office. Anyway, I just want to run through just a couple points about his illegal killings. And I keep hearing people in the media, or pundits or whatever, refer to these murders as extrajudicial killings, meaning these people are not being killed by the Trump administration pursuant to a death sentence handed down by a court. And clearly we are not at war. So they say they're extrajudicial. They're outside the judicial system. What do we call it when you kill someone and it's not legal? It's done outside of the judicial system. And it's not legal because it's not legal here. And I'll explain that further in a second. But what do you call that? That's called murder. If it's an intentional killing, which clearly these are. It's murder. If there's something less than a specific intent, it's still a crime, but it's a different crime. Maybe it's manslaughter or something like that. But that's not at issue here. This is an intentional murder of these, an intentional illegal killing of these people. That is what we call murder. Donald Trump is having people murdered. Pete Hegseth is having people murdered. Those in the chain of command who are carrying out these illegal orders are having people murdered. The military is required to obey the laws and the Constitution. They are required to disobey illegal orders. They're not in this case. They are carrying out murders on the orders of Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth. And I'm sorry, but anyone in the chain of command who carried out these illegal orders should be prosecuted too. But let's run down just a list of the facts of some things that are going on. Of course, we know about these killings. There have been, I don't even know how many we're up to. In fact, I believe he posted another video today of a boat he blew up. And from what I'm told, this time in the Pacific. I don't have any more specific information about that. I saw that posted just before I started recording here. But apparently he just blew up another boat, this time in the Pacific. We'll have to see what that's about. But he's been telling us that these are just drug smugglers from Venezuela. We now know that that's bullshit. They're from multiple countries. Here we have from CBS News, Trinidad and Tobago police investigating reports 2 of their citizens were killed in U.S. strike off of Venezuela. So we have that. And just so you know, here's an example of a video. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. This is an example of a video that Trump has posted in which they blew up a boat. Take a look at that boat. You see that boat there? Now let's take a look at these boats. Here is Las Cuevas, Trinidad, the fishing village where the men who were blown up by a U.S. missile used to live. This is the town in which they are investigating. This is where 2 of the citizens talked about in this article where they lived. So Trinidad police are investigating. Take a look at these boats. Those are fishing boats. You see those boats? Let me see if I can get it even a little bigger for you. You see those boats there? Those are fishing boats. And I want to bring this up specifically because I heard I think he's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, this guy who's supposed to have been the grown-up in the administration. No such thing, sorry. He was in the Oval Office, and or I think actually it was the cabinet room. Doesn't matter where the fuck he was. And he was talking about these boats that were blown up, and he described them as narco-terrorists, and he described the boats as gunboats. take a look at this video that Donald Trump posted, one of the many, and they all look like this. Okay, there is one of these supposed gunboats. I hope you can see that big enough. Like if you're looking on your phone, it might not seem so big. So there's this supposed gunboat sitting there. And by the way, I think that was an example of a boat. There was a report that one of these boats was in distress. The engines gave out or something, and they were just floating in the ocean. They had a distress call out for help. And as you'll notice, this boat was not moving at all prior to being blown up, just sitting there. You'll see no wake, you'll see no nothing at all. They're just clearly not moving, and they're just sitting there waiting for help, and boom, blown up, murdered. Oh, and okay, so I have one thing I want to return to, but before I do, you saw the boat, right? There it is. That's what it looks like. And here, here's the boats in that fishing village in Trinidad. Look at those boats. Looks exactly like the boat right here that he just blew up, right? That's a fucking fishing boat. That's certainly not a gunboat. Does that look like a gunboat to you? No, not a gunboat. Now, let's review real quick why this is so clearly illegal. A president is commander-in-chief of the military. And it's important to understand what that means, by the way. It means that when the military is to be used, the president shall serve as the commander-in-chief of the military. Think of him as the top general, right? The commanding officer of the military. Just because he is the commander-in-chief does not give him any authority whatsoever to take us to war. He doesn't get to decide when we go to war, who we get to take military action against. That is a power specifically granted only to Congress. Only Congress has the power to declare war. And when they do, when they declare war, it is then the president's job as commander-in-chief to command our military forces in the conduct of that war. But people seem to think that because he is commander-in-chief, he can just decide when he wants to go to war. That's not at all how it works. So that's number one. So when does a president acting as commander-in-chief of the military legally allowed to use deadly force, kill people? Well, one, if it's done pursuant to an authorization from Congress, by Congress, a declaration of war or some other, however they frame it. If it's authorized, pardon my stammering, if it's authorized by Congress, that's the first instance. The second is if the president is allowed to use deadly force in the immediate defense of the country against an imminent threat that is so serious in nature that it requires deadly force and that there's no time to go to Congress and get authorization. And even then, per the War Powers Act, any action he takes for that reason must be limited in scope and duration, and he has to immediately inform the Congress, and the Congress would then have to approve it to continue the military action. So the two times he can use deadly force is pursuant to congressional authorization, and in this case there is none. Or two, if he's acting in the immediate defense of our country against an imminent deadly threat, or a threat so serious it requires deadly military force. Neither of those things is present in the situation of him killing these people in these tiny boats. And we're talking about boats that are over 1,000 miles away from the U.S. homeland. And they are tiny boats. There's no way these boats can even make it here unless they stop for gas multiple times. Okay, none of this makes any sense. He's provided no information to support his claims that these people are drug smugglers or narco-terrorists. And even if they are, that doesn't change the legality of this one iota. Smuggling drugs into the United States is a criminal activity. It's not an act of war, and the president, and it's certainly no threat that is so serious that the president must, even without going to Congress, because there's no time, it's so the threat is so serious, he has to take deadly military action and kill those people. That's bullshit. We've been dealing with drug smugglers in this country for how frickin' long? We've not just blown them up. We interdict them. We arrest them. We take them into custody. We question them. We interrogate them. We find out who else they're working with. Who were they going to hand those drugs off to? Do they have people here in the United States who are waiting for those drugs and then we're going to distribute those drugs? We interrogate them to find out the whole network and to go after the rest of them. That's what we do. We've been doing this for decades. We don't need to blow them up. And in fact, if your goal is to disrupt these drug smuggling networks, then this is counterproductive. You're just killing a couple of people, and now you're not able to find out any more about the other people they're in cahoots with, because you just killed them. We can't get any more information from them. But regardless, drug dealing, drug smuggling, drug possession is not even a capital offense. It doesn't carry the death penalty. But here we are, just murdering these people because we say they were smuggling drugs? And the legality of this is so questionable at best, but it's not even questionable. It's not even arguable. It's illegal. We have the commander of the Southern Command who has responsibility over this area of operation resigning. I think this was about a week or so ago. Head of the U.S. military Southern Command is stepping down. And it is reported here, by the way, here is that man. And his name is Admiral Alvin Holsey. And it is reported that he resigned because he knows this is all illegal. And he doesn't want any part of this. And he's smart enough to know that he could be prosecuted for taking part in this. As I said, the military is required to disobey illegal orders. And here they're being told to murder people. So he resigned. And you probably heard about this. Here we go. This is from the AP. U.S. has seized survivors after strike on suspected drug-carrying vessel in the Caribbean. So we blew up a boat. 2 people survived. What to do with the survivors? Well, these people are such a serious threat to the country, right? Which is why Trump had no choice. Can't go to Congress. I have no choice. I got to kill these people. They're such a threat. So obviously we took them into custody, right? We're going to put them on trial and seek the death penalty. I mean, if we're killing these people, obviously it's a death penalty worthy crime, right? So we take them, we charge them, we seek the death penalty, and then we give them the same punishment we gave to their buddies, right? That's what we're going to do, obviously. Nah. We sent them back to their country of origin. U.S. is repatriating, this is from the New York Times, repatriating survivors of its strike on suspected drug vessel. 2 men rescued by the U.S. military after it attacked a boat in the Caribbean Sea were being sent to their home countries of Colombia and Ecuador. Wait. Now I'm confused. I thought these were Venezuelans. Am I just not pronouncing this right? Let me see this again. Nope, definitely not Venezuela. Colombia and Ecuador. Huh. So he's been lying about this all being Venezuelans smuggling drugs? Because he's been saying that this was a state-sponsored. He says if Venezuela Maduro is doing this. He is sending these drug smugglers to the United States to flood our country with drugs. The two survivors were Colombian and Ecuadorian. Or Ecuadorian. How do you say that? I don't know. Don't care. And then we have this. Here is a tweet from Gustavo Petro, who is the president of Colombia. And he wrote, U.S. government officials have committed a murder and violated our sovereignty in territorial waters. And let me translate. This was translated from the original Spanish, okay? But let me translate it further from the English translation, where he says U.S. government officials have committed a murder. That is, what you want to say there is Donald Trump has committed a murder. And Pete Hegseth has committed a murder. Anyway, he further writes, fisherman Alejandro Carranza had no ties to the drug trade, and his daily activity was fishing. The Colombian boat was adrift and had its distress signal up due to an engine failure. We await explanations from the U.S. government. Well, they're not going to get any explanation. In fact, Donald Trump already responded to this tweet with one of his own, in which he attacked the Colombian president, as you would expect. But he says here, fisherman Alejandro Carranza had no ties to the drug trade and his daily activity was fishing. He was adrift and had his distress signal up due to an engine failure. And remember, here we go. I do believe that this was Mr. Carranza sitting in this boat here. But if not, this one looked just like it. Just sitting there. Boom. Dead. There you go. That's what your government is doing in your name, if you are an American citizen. If you are watching from outside the country or are not an American citizen, then your country is not engaged in the murder of innocent civilians as the United States government is. Let me see what else I have here. So we had Gustavo Petro. And then I want to play one final video clip here. This is from U.S. Senator, Republican from Kentucky, Rand Paul, who is not defending Donald Trump in these illegal murders, and he is speaking out against it. So take a look at this.
Number one, there is no fentanyl made in Venezuela. Not just a little bit, there's none being made in Venezuela. These are outboard boats that, in order for them to get to Miami, would have to stop and refuel 20 times. They're in all likely going to Trinidad and Tobago, which is an island right off of the coast of Venezuela. So there's a lot of reasons to be worried about this. But number one is the broader principle of when can you kill people indiscriminately? When you're at war. That's why when we declare war, it's supposed to be done by Congress. It's supposed to be thoughtful. It's supposed to be debated. And we're not supposed to do it willy-nilly. And then when you have war, you just kill people in the war zone. And even then there are rules of engagement. But interdicting drugs has always been a criminal activity and a criminal anti-crime sort of activity where we don't just summarily execute people. We actually present evidence and convict them.
My friends, this is murder. It's a war crime. It's murder. And by the way, the people who keep cheering this, Trump supporters who cheer this, they'll tell you that they're devout Christians, right? Pro-life. We're all created in the image of God. Those people. They're celebrating God's children being blown up without due process, just because they are supposedly drug smugglers, on the word of one man who has offered no evidence that they are in fact drug smugglers, and which we now have a president of another country claiming at least one of them was a fisherman. And then we have Trinidad and Tobago police investigating two that were murdered by Donald Trump because they believe that they were just fishermen as well. And we have MAGAs here, Republicans, devout Christians, who are celebrating posting disgusting memes about these people being fish food and all kinds of things. Fellow human beings just being blown up without any proof that they did anything wrong. And even if they were smuggling drugs, not a capital crime. You know, people do stupid things, people do criminal things. Sometimes they go to prison for it and then reform their lives. You know, part of Christianity is redemption and salvation through Jesus Christ and all that. These Trump supporters, I guess, don't believe in that. They don't even want to give these people the opportunity to find salvation, to repent for their crimes, their sins. No. You smuggle drugs, you should die. This is a crime. He's doing it as President of the United States in our name. He is using our money and our military to murder people. This man and everyone who followed his illegal orders should be impeached or otherwise removed from office, and they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. These are criminals. And I hope at some point this is taken to the International Criminal Court and that there are warrants put out for their arrests. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.